By now, we should be good at love. We are more educated, more self-aware, and more emotionally literate than any generation before us. We know our attachment styles, we can name our wounds, we have read the books, listened to the podcasts, gone to therapy, and done the work. Some of us have done a lot of work, and yet love feels harder than ever. Dating feels like a second job nobody trained you for. Relationships feel fragile, and intimacy feels confusing or just out of reach. Even inside partnerships that look solid from the outside, there's often this quiet loneliness, the nagging feeling that something essential is missing. I see this constantly in people who are wildly competent in every area of their lives and completely baffled by why love refuses to cooperate. These are not people who lack insight, they lack ease. And that difference is everything. Today I'm going to show you why intimacy feels harder in 2026, what the data on the dating recession is confirming, and the real reason none of your self-work has closed the gap between what you understand about love and what you actually feel. Stay until the end because I'm going to share the 3 things that actually need to shift for you to feel the love you've been searching for. Not in theory, but in your body. I'm Sarrah Rose, and I've spent over 20 years studying one question. Why do the most successful people in the world struggle most with intimacy? The answer changed everything I thought I knew about love, and it became the foundation of the tantric activation method, my work with over 2,500 people, and this podcast. I'm the founder of CEO on Fire, the creator of Elixir, and I've been featured in Vogue, Men's Health, and Cosmopolitan. But none of that is why you're here. You're here because something in what I just said landed. And that is exactly what we're going to talk about today. I want to tell you something I don't say enough. When I went to India to study Tantra, I wasn't going as an expert. I wasn't going to deepen a practice that I had already mastered. I was going because my life had broken open. I was a young mother. A chapter of my life had just ended. I was coming out of a deeply religious upbringing that had given me a very specific set of rules about who I was supposed to be as a woman, as a person, as someone who was supposed to have it all figured out. And I had followed those rules. I had done everything right by the standards I had been handed, and it still hadn't worked. So I went to the Himalayas, not with answers, but with wreckage. I was healing. I was finding myself maybe for the first time in my life. And what I found there in that ancient lineage, in that rigorous training, was something nobody in my religious past, nobody in therapy, nobody in the self-help books had ever told me. That the reason things hadn't worked out had nothing to do with how hard I was trying. It had everything to do with the fact that I had never learned how to feel safe enough to let real love in. I had spent my whole life performing the role I was given, managing it, doing it right, and I had never once learned how to choose for myself or receive what I actually deserved. That realization didn't just change my work, it changed my life. And it's the reason I built everything I've built since. Modern success trains us really well. We learn how to plan, optimize, execute, we push through discomfort, we become excellent at independence, self-reliance, and control. And these traits are rewarded, they are celebrated, they are promoted, but they also make intimacy harder than it needs to be. Love responds to effort, but not effort rooted in control. It deepens through presence, not pressure, and it does not thrive under constant management, not at all. That the very strategies that make someone impressive in the world, it often makes them exhausted in their relationships. Competence becomes armor. It protects against uncertainty, vulnerability, and dependence, and it creates strength and confidence, but it also creates distance. Distance from softness, distance from receptivity, distance from the kind of emotional risk that intimacy actually requires. And on top of that personal conditioning, we're operating in an ecosystem that makes depth even harder to find. A system built for speed, for options, for constant comparison. One that rewards the dopamine hit of the new match over the slow, uncertain work of building something real. People don't develop depth or the willingness to take emotional risk. They don't stay long enough for something real to develop. So even when someone is doing everything right, they're still working against a current that pulls them out of connection. A 2026 national study of over 5,000 young adults found that most people are not dating much at all, despite still wanting to marry. It's being called the dating recession. And what's driving it isn't a fear of commitment, it's a lack of emotional skills and resilience. People want love, but don't know how to stay in it. Meanwhile, 79% of Gen Z report feeling burned out from dating apps, and usage is declining. People are increasingly trying to meet offline again through running clubs, community groups, different real world spaces because they want connection. And the digital way we've been trying to find it for the last 15 years isn't working. At the same time, loneliness is rising across every age group, and time spent on AI companion apps has surged. More people, especially younger generations, are choosing digital interaction over real intimacy, not because they prefer it, but because real connection has started to feel too hard to sustain. We know more about love than any generation in history, and yet we are experiencing it less. That is not a coincidence. I worked with a woman in her early 40s, a founder, extraordinarily successful, deeply intentional about everything in her life, and she came to me because she couldn't fall in love, and she didn't understand what she was doing wrong. She just didn't feel anything when she went out with people. She approached dating the same way she approached everything else. She was clear, efficient, she knew what she wanted, but dates felt like interviews. Connections felt transactional. And every relationship started to feel like a project, something she had to figure out, to manage, to keep on track. And what became clear was that she wasn't in the relationship. She was running it. She never slowed down long enough to simply be with the person in front of her. Her mind was constantly analyzing, scanning, evaluating, deciding. The same skills that made her powerful in business were keeping her completely disconnected in love. She wasn't failing at intimacy because she wasn't trying. She was failing because she was trying in exactly the wrong way. She had turned love into homework and then wondered why it stopped feeling alive. What's happened with modern dating is that when something feels off, instead of slowing down to explore what it might be, people move on. We've been trained to expect there's always another option. There's going to be another match. There's going to be another possibility. Maybe the next one will be easier. And as a culture, people have become addicted to that dopamine hit, that Pavlovian response to the new match, the hope that the next one will be different. So when something feels uncertain, instead of staying and being curious about what's actually happening, people exit. They're not willing to ask, maybe there's something real here, and it's up to me to stay long enough to find out. And over time, that trains you to disconnect faster, not go deeper. And it gets harder and harder because connection doesn't happen instantly. Attraction might, chemistry might, but real connection builds through repeated moments of presence and emotional safety. Your body needs time to feel before it can trust. Modern dating doesn't give it that time. I worked with a man who kept losing interest the moment things got serious. You've heard this before, right? It happens all the time. This particular man, he didn't think he was shallow. He wanted something real, but he had a pattern of short-term relationships. And right when emotional intimacy began to deepen, something in him just disconnected. He'd think about other options, he'd create distance, and from that place of distance, of course, it stopped feeling right. He thought he was losing interest in the women he was dating, but what I helped him understand was that he was actually losing himself in the moment the relationship started to matter. The moment real vulnerability arrived, he left. Not physically, but internally. And once he left himself, connection with the other person became impossible. Not because it wasn't there, but because he wasn't there. In tantric philosophy, there's an understanding that has guided this work for thousands of years, that there is a life force that animates connection, desire, and aliveness, and it can't be rushed. It can't be optimized. It can't be managed into existence, but it's cultivated and it moves at the pace of safety. And our modern life runs completely counter to this. We move fast, we compare constantly, we exit the moment something feels uncertain. And the body, which is where connection actually lives, cannot build trust at that speed. The nervous system reorganizes through repeated safe experiences, not through information. You can understand someone is right for you intellectually and still feel your body contract when they get close. You can want connection desperately and still find yourself pulling back the moment it arrives. This is not failure, it's protection. And no amount of trying harder, moving faster, or understanding more will change it. What changes it is experience, presence, staying in the moment long enough for something real to build. You know, one of the most painful experiences is feeling alone inside a relationship. And yet so many people feel exactly that. I worked with a couple who, from the outside, they looked solid. They were committed, they were functional. People in their lives assumed they had it together. But there was this distance between them. They would sit next to each other at night, both on their phones, both working together, but completely disconnected. And they came to me because they were worried that when the kids moved out, when the distractions were gone, that they wouldn't have anything left to stay for. Valid point. And in one of our sessions, she said to me, I feel alone, even when we're together. Nothing dramatic had happened. There was no affair, no rupture, just a series of small moments where neither of them was fully present. And over time, the connection had disappeared. A relationship doesn't fall apart all at once. It falls apart in the moments where no one is really there, where everything else keeps mattering more than the person right in front of you. So if modern love feels hard, it's not because you're doing something wrong. It's because you're trying to build depth inside a system designed to prevent it. And because you were trained from early on to manage and perform and optimize and love the same way you do everywhere else. And trying harder doesn't fix this. Moving faster doesn't fix this. Understanding more doesn't fix this. Something else has to shift. There are 3 things. The first is to stop leaving the moment. The moment people feel genuinely touched is usually the exact moment they leave themselves. They go into their heads, they start evaluating, they stop feeling. Being touched by another person, it makes you feel vulnerable. And vulnerability is uncomfortable, sometimes even terrifying for a nervous system trained around self-protection. So people close off instead of staying open. They manage instead of feel. The work is simply to notice when you shut down and come back. Don't force yourself open, but just notice and gently return. Make the choice to let yourself be present again. Because love doesn't disappear. You just left the moment you felt it. And the second is to stay longer than you normally would. Modern dating trains you to move on the moment something feels uncertain, but connection requires you to stay. In moments that feel unfamiliar, unclear, not immediately comfortable, long enough for something real to build. Love doesn't grow in speed, it grows in presence. So modern love isn't broken, but it's moving too fast to feel. And the third is to let your body experience connection. Your body doesn't trust what it hasn't experienced. It is wired evolutionarily to repeat what it knows because the known feels survivable. Something genuinely new feels risky, even when it's good. You move through that by letting yourself feel what's actually here, not analyzing it, not deciding whether it's right, just experiencing it repeatedly over time until the body learns that this is safe. Because connection isn't something you decide, it's something your body learns. In tantric terms, this is life force that has been dammed, slowly learning to flow again. Not because you forced it, but because you finally stopped blocking it. Before you move into your next interaction today, whether it's a date, a conversation with your partner, or even a moment with a friend, try this. Before you speak, before you evaluate, before you decide how you feel, take one breath and ask yourself a single question. Am I here? Not performing here, not managing here, but actually present in your body in this moment with this person. If the answer is no, don't judge it, just notice and choose for the next 60 seconds to stay. That's it, 60 seconds of real presence instead of managed performance. In Tantra, we understand that your life force, your capacity for aliveness and connection, it moves the moment you stop contracting against it. You don't have to force it open. You just have to stop leaving. Modern love doesn't need more strategy. It needs more safety, more presence, more permission to feel without immediately bracing for impact. This isn't about abandoning insight or self-awareness, but it is about putting understanding back in its rightful place as a beginning, not as a destination. Because love deepens when the body feels safe enough to stay, when protection softens, when presence replaces performance. You are not failing at love. You were handed a set of rules about how love is supposed to work that had nothing to do with how intimacy actually functions. I know that because I lived it. I followed every rule I was given and still found myself alone, starting over, rebuilding from the ground up in the mountains of India. What I found there wasn't a new set of rules. It was permission to finally feel. That permission is available to you too, and it starts here. If this resonated, follow Love Activated so you don't miss the next episode. If you want to go deeper, you can find me at sarrahrose.com. But before you close this, try the practice just once today. In your next real interaction with another person, ask yourself, am I here? Because modern love isn't failing because people aren't trying. It's failing because no one is staying in the moment long enough for it to deepen. And you can be the one who does.